Good evening. This is Nationwide on NTA. I am Ifoma Ojinta. Thanks for joining us. 204 new cases of COVID-19 have been confirmed in Nigeria by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. A breakdown of the figures showed that 80 cases were in Kano, 45 in Lagos, 12 in Gombe, 9 in Bauchi, 9 in Sokoto, 7 each in Edo and Borno, while Rivers and Ogun had 6 each. The FCT, Akwa Ibom and Bayelsa states have 4 each. Oyo 2, Delta 2, Nasarawa 2 and Ondo 1. As at 11:50 p.m. April 30th, 2020, the total number of confirmed cases have risen to 1,932. 319 patients have been discharged and 58 deaths recorded. The federal government has issued a comprehensive guideline on the gradual ease of the total lockdown, which will commence on Monday, 4th May 2020. This is following the presidential broadcast of Monday, 27th April 2020, in which President Muhammadu Buhari announced the gradual ease of lifting of the lockdown in Lagos, Ogun, and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. Donyidia reports.
The statement signed by Secretary to Government of the Federation and Chairman Presidential Committee on COVID-19, Boss Mustafa, provides general information on new COVID-19 measures and protocols for containment of the disease. The federal government acknowledged the improvements in the multi-sectoral response to the coronavirus pandemic and wants all the existing guidelines on proper hygiene to be maintained. The ease of the lockdown is also characterized by enforceable actions such as compulsory use of non-medical face masks covering for all persons while in public spaces, mandatory temperature checks to be conducted in public spaces. Religious gatherings are still restricted and mandatory supervised isolation of persons arriving from outside the country for at least 14 days. The imposition of overnight nationwide curfew from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. starting from May 4th to 17, 2020. Movement of persons between local government areas is strongly discouraged except for critical healthcare, work and shopping for necessary food items. For the agricultural sector, persons above the age of 65 years and those with underlying chronic illness such as diabetes and high blood pressure are advised to remain at home. Trucks bearing agricultural and animal products are allowed easy passage. Government offices and other corporate entities are to open from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. daily with limited staff working to between 30 to 50%. So as to maintain social distancing. Local authorities are allowed to determine date and time for the opening of neighborhood markets, abattoirs and warehouses not more than 3 times a week. Recreational centers such as beer parlors, clubs, gardens and others are to remain closed with suspension of the usage of recreational parks, communal sports, concerts, social parties, movie theaters, amongst others, except for food restaurants, which are allowed to open from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. only for buy and takeaway services. All schools are to remain closed to further evaluation as schools are encouraged to continue with e-learning and visual teaching. State governments and security agencies are therefore enjoined to ensure effective, strict enforcement of the guidelines as the level of compliance will be reviewed in 2 weeks before additional guidelines for phase 2 will be issued. In Abuja, Donyidia, NT News.
It is incredible that coronavirus could keep workers away from the 2020 Workers' Day celebration worldwide, usually observed every 1st of May, a day to assess how government and employers have responded to workers' needs vis-a-vis economic prosperity within the year. Large gathering like it used to be over the years is certainly not possible this 2020 May Day celebration due to coronavirus pandemic, which has shut down every human endeavor. Let's join Labour correspondent Emmanuel Anyimiro to tell us how the International Labour Organization is canvassing the adoption of relevant ILO conventions and standards for post-COVID-19 economic recovery.
We commend the National Assembly and President Muhammadu Buhari for ascending to our demand for an increased national minimum wage.
On all governments at all levels and also the private sector to ensure that contributory pensions deductions both from the staff and from employers are remitted to pension administrators as at when due.
These were the highlights of the 2019 Workers' Day, the year that witnessed the implementation of national minimum wage in August, with officers on level 4 and below, while others began in December 2019. Every category of worker were paid arrears of 8 months as well. Even though the 2020 Workers' Day is devoid of any gathering due to coronavirus pandemic, the International Labour Organization, ILO, is already looking beyond, suggesting how governments and international institutions can mitigate the effects.
We need to continue to try to stimulate the global economy, and that works best when there is better international cooperation. We need to promote policies that both protect and sustain enterprises, support income, and lead to job retention.
The third edition of ILO's monitoring of COVID-19 and the World of Work says the drop in working hours in the current second quarter of 2020 is significantly worse than previously estimated. This is especially on the informal economy, with about 2 billion workers worldwide, which is more than half global workforce, puts the workers at immediate danger of having their livelihoods destroyed.
Axiomatically, we all know that the informal economy, where about 6 out of 10 of all working people in the world make their living, is synonymous with unprotected work, precarity at work. And so it is important that we see what is going on in this most vulnerable part of the global labour market.
As the pandemic and jobs crisis evolve, the need to protect the most vulnerable becomes even more urgent, says the ILO Director General Guy Ryder. For millions of workers, no income means no food, no security, and no future. So the 2020 Workers' Day provides another opportunity to press for stronger economic policies together with stimulus packages critical to making recovery effective and sustainable. Emmanuel Anyimiro, NTA News.
Meanwhile, the leadership of the organized labor has joined workers across the globe to mark Workers' Day celebration in a low-key, without the usual fanfare and large gathering of crowd that usually characterized the previous celebrations as a result of COVID-19 lockdown. The occasion, which took place at the Labour House in Abuja, afforded workers' representatives to remind governments at all levels to begin to engage on mitigating the impact of COVID-19 on socio-economic situation of the country.
The peculiar need here is to invest in social protection measures which can help mitigate the worst shock of the crisis while acting as an economic stabilizer.
Employers and workers owe the economy the joint responsibility to sustain productivity and competitiveness of business from continued employment of the workforce.
Since Nigeria depends largely on crude oil for foreign earning, Labour wants the economy to be diversified to avoid over-dependence on only one commodity, which, when affected at the global market, the consequences will be severe on the country. And more stories on the day as we link up with Funke Ibidamitan in Ibadan.
Workers' Day. Labour and government converge converge right here at the Leko Salami Stadium at Damasingba here in Ibadan to interface on affairs concerning labor and government. Today, the narrative is different. No thanks to COVID-19.
Currently in Oyo State, any gathering that is of more than 10 people is illegal, is not welcome. And because of that, we are unable to hold a normal rally. Because the theme for this year's celebration is 60 years of nationhood.
We expect the government to do a kind of a palliative measures to the essential staffs that are working at this point. At least is a kind of a hazard allowance will not be too much to be added to the salary of the media workers.
It's been full of mixed feelings for journalists and for other people of the society. Last year we celebrated one, and we are looking forward to a better celebration this year. But unfortunately, today we have something in our hand, a pandemic.
Being a public holiday as declared by the federal government, civil servants and members of the organized labor in Ibadan say it's business as usual with the ongoing ban on mass gathering. Isolato E-Africa in Ibadan. Funke Bidamito, NTA News.
Many thanks, Funke. Now, the federal government says it remains committed to ensuring the welfare and security of Nigerian workers despite the coronavirus pandemic. The Minister for Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, made this known while speaking with other labour union administrators on Good Morning Nigeria. Daniel Aderiye tells us more.
It will be the first time in 40 years that the Workers' Day celebration would be done without the usual fanfare. Despite that, guests on Good Morning Nigeria say that though the livelihood of workers are threatened by this pandemic, the approach and measures used in combating COVID-19 must be inward-born.
At this point in time, the working class are actually at the receiving end because all the threats are targeted at the working class. Yes, the problem is global, but we must think also inward to see how we protect means of livelihood, how we're able to continue to produce, and importantly is also how to keep our people safe.
Health first, for people to be alive, before we talk about economy. Second is economy, job retention, preserve the ones we have, and then make efforts to create more.
Regardless of the loopholes that COVID-19 has revealed so far, other guests, however, called on the adoption of an intense and vibrant approach in tackling the economic and health impacts of the pandemic post-COVID-19.
We need to invest more in preventive care, and that would bring that we need to create even more jobs, so we don't need to sack.
We want to appeal that the palliative, the first one we want to appeal for is that there should be proper medical facilities in the country.
And as representative body of organized businesses, our position has always been to every employers of labor that you must also pay back the loyalty of your workers by carrying them along and maintaining the full complement of your workers for as long as it is practicable.
They urged the Nigerian workforce to adhere strictly to the preventive measures laid down by the health authorities, even as the workers commemorate May Day. In Abuja, Daniel Aderiye, NTA News.
We now pause on Nationwide to bring you the daily briefing by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19.